Welcome. I'm Doug Morgan, and you're listening to Uncommon Sense, where we hunt for the truth in the topics you're not supposed to talk about, Christianity and politics. And welcome back to the Friday edition of the podcast. And if you have listened to the podcast before, you probably know Friday is FOMO Friday. Yeah, we love to dispense of your fear of missing out by not knowing what's going on around the world, possibly. You're not listening to propaganda media. You want to know what's happening, and we bring you the stories that you, maybe as a Christian or from a Christian perspective anyway, should know about. And we bring you a number of ones this week that I think are rather interesting. First of all, from a series of articles from the Daily Wire comes this one. And basically, it is about how our public school systems are not very good. Let's just put it that way. They're not very good. When I was on a school board, I was chairman of a school board for a number of years. And when I was on there, I saw a trend. Let's just put it that way. I saw a trend. The trend was that the school systems, both some of the administrators, some definitely amongst the teachers and the teacher unions, really believed that they were much better than parents. That if it wasn't for parents getting in the way, that our society would be so much better because, they were in charge and they're, teaching our kids. Well, that has, I believe, only gotten worse. And that kind of attitude. And it kind of was on full display this week. I thought Sarah Parshall Perry put it really well in her opinion piece. Now, Parshall is the vice president and legal fellow at Defending Education. And this is what she said. She said, on Wednesday, the superintendents of 3 of America's most ideologically captured school systems, Loudoun County, San Francisco, and Chicago, testified in front of the House Education and Workforce Committee in a hearing entitled Breaking Trust, Attacks on Parental Rights, Inappropriate Content, and Legal Abuses in America's Schools. Okay, that sounds good, right? 3 hours later, the witnesses had proved the hearing's thesis was true. Asked time and again about the federal rights of parents and children they serve, all 3 offered a masterclass in, catechisms and of bureaucracy, deflect, deny, and aver fidelity to the law. Even when the federal government has formally and frequently found otherwise. Well, Loudoun County's Dr. Aaron Spence told Congress his district is, quote, in the business of building trust, unquote, and follows the law, he also added. Well, if so, the Department of Education would like a word. In July of 2025, it was formally determined that the district violates Title IX by opening intimate facilities to students based on gender identity rather than sex, and that Loudoun County Public Schools, or the LCPS, their Stone Bridge High School had retaliated against a group of boys for reporting sexual harassment when a female student was given access to their locker room. In March, the district settled with 2 of those boys, and just last month, the department opened yet another LCPS investigation after a teen boy allegedly photographed and filmed dozens of underage girls in the bathroom stalls over 3 years. That's conduct for which the county sheriff has filed charges, by the way. Yet, Dr. Spence's response days before Wednesday's hearing was, I don't believe that our policies are failing children. That was his response. And if somebody decides to do something bad in a restroom, that's not something that's preventable based on our policies. Okay. A federal agency's findings of civil rights violations, a legal statement, criminal charges, a fresh federal probe, and no policy failure in sight. The audacity is breathtaking. Well, but let's look at San Francisco's Dr. Maria Sue. Maria Sue. She arrived with, well, careful executed script. Let's just put it that way, okay? Chairman Tim Walberg asked Sue 4 times at what age children should be exposed to Drag Queen Story Hour. 4 times she declined to answer, repeating to, quote, "We welcome all 49,000 students as they are," unquote. Asked by Representative Robert Onder whether biological males should be in locker rooms with girls, she answered twice, quote, "We follow state and federal law," unquote, which the congressman rightly took as a yes. California non-discrimination law directly contradicts Title IX. And when asked whether the San Francisco Unified School District, or SFUSD, hides a minor's gender identity information from his or her parents, Sue conceded the district is still, quote, "adjusting its practices," unquote, to comply with the Supreme Court's March order in Marabelli versus Bonta, blocking that was the one blocking California's non-disclosure regime. 3 months post Marabelli, the district is apparently still adjusting to the proposition that mothers and fathers may not be deceived about their own children. Meanwhile, the district's vaunted homegrown ethics study program made news this week when a teacher simply swapped the approved curriculum for personal lessons on Sydney Sweeney and Elon Musk, the Nazi. That's what she called him. Who's minding the classroom? Well, in the SFUSD, apparently no one. All right, let's look at Chicago. Chicago, Dr. Macalyn King rounded out the panel, defending a district whose policies on gender identity keep parents in the dark and whose partnership with Planned Parenthood she has personally highlighted. Like her co-panelists, King treated every question about parental rights as an attack to be survived rather than an obligation to be honored, while Democrats coached the witnesses not to, as Representative Hayes put it, buy into the bull. This is the posture of an educational establishment that has forgotten who it works for. Parental rights are not a talking point. They are federal law. And the era of pretending otherwise is over. Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act guarantees parents access to their children's educational records. And in April, the Department of Education found 4 Kansas districts in violation for concealing students' gender transitions from their parents. Title IX protects girls' privacy, safety, and equal opportunity. Loudoun has already been found in violation once and is under investigation for proposed violations again. The Supreme Court held in Momdow versus Taylor that parents with religious obligations to, normative curriculum are entitled to notice and opt out, a right reinforced in the Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment, and a right that Dr. Sue was forced to admit her school district must honor. Every one of these legal obligations attaches to federal checks that districts are all too eager to cash, right? They love the money, they just don't like what comes with the money. Parents are tired of being, just supplicants of a schoolhouse door. They are rights holders with receipts and possessed of long institutional memories, with children still languishing under the weight of COVID-era learning losses. On Wednesday, high-profile school officials made clear two things: how little they grasp the federal law that binds them, and how much more litigation and enforcement are necessary to fully restore parental primacy in public schools. It's high time these educators got a lesson in compliance with the law. And I would agree. I mean, the worst thing in their minds as administrators and as teachers, the worst thing is parents having rights and vetoing what they are trying to indoctrinate into our kids. And so, again, just, it is reason number 4,862 of why you need to pull your kids out of public schools. There's lots and lots of other places that they can learn way more and better, faster. I mean, and not be indoctrinated by these people who think that your kids do not belong to you. They belong to them. Well, news out of Canada. We have news out of Canada. Blake Shapner, he wrote this. He says, Canada Parliament is poised to pass a bill that would ramp up restrictions on so-called hate speech and remove religious protections in a move that concerns conservatives and Christians whose worldview stands in opposition to the LGBT ideology. Yeah, this is big. Canada's Combating Hate Act, as they call it. Combating Hate Act. I mean, how can you be against Combating Hate Act, right? It's also called Bill C-9. It targets so-called hate crimes such as the public display of the Nazi swastika, well, I guess unless it's tattooed on your chest here in America, and other terrorist symbols. And it also, get this, increases the punishment for intimidation, that's the word it's used, intimidation around places of worship and safe places. But also buried inside the bill is a controversial section that removes Canada's religious exemption for so-called hate speech. I mean, why would you do that? Really? Why would you remove that? What would be the reason for removing that other than what we're about to talk about? Because some worry that the bill would be used to silence Christian expression that opposes gay marriage. Of course it does. That's why it's in there. The bill passed the country's House of Commons in March and was adopted by the Senate last week. And it was then sent back to the House of Commons to resolve amendments made in the Senate. And it is expected to be accepted without opposition and be signed into law by the Governor General. Now, Canada's Liberal government made an agreement with the secular Bloc Québécois. It's a party devoted to the Quebec's nationalism type stuff, to include in the bill a section that removes the religious exemption clause to hate speech that is currently in Canadian law code. With the removal of the religious exemption, people can be prosecuted for hate speech, even if the person expressed or attempted to establish by an argument of opinion on a religious subject or an opinion based on a belief in a religious text. That is huge. Josh DeHaas from the Canadian Constitution Foundation warned that the bill could even target the reading of certain scripture passages due to the removal of this religious protection. Quote, it is unlikely passages from religious texts read on their own will lead to criminal charges. That's what he stated. The Crown would need to believe that the intention of reading the text was to incite hatred, promote hatred, or promote anti-Semitism. However, this is what he added. However, with the defense now removed, certain passages from religious texts could now lead to charges depending on the context, including when they are read, where they are read, and what other words are used when they are read. Now, Canadian Supreme Court has made a test for hate speech by looking for hallmarks of hatred, as they put it. The hallmarks include calling a specific group a powerful menace, accusing a group of carrying out secret conspiracies to gain global control, or that they are plotting to destroy Western civilization, calling a group liars, cheats, criminals, and thugs, labeling a people group subhuman, or blaming a group for the problems of society. That's all classified as hate speech. The bill does include at least one protection against abuse, requiring the approval of the provisional attorney to the charge cannot be weaponized by local police. Now, Hillsdale Assistant Professor Dr. John Petcrus is an expert in comparative political systems and Canadian and American law, and he told the Daily Wire that the Canadian Supreme Court would likely defend bill if it becomes law, and following its decision in Saskatchewan Human Rights Commission versus Whatcott, in which the court upheld a penalty for a man who spread anti-gay pamphlets. Quote, "It is difficult to predict exactly how these legal challenges will operate in practice and whether people might be able to challenge them on constitutional grounds, like freedom of speech and freedom of religion and those things, you know." He also said, "I will say that the court's Whatcott decision should make one, pessimistic. The courts are likely to dismiss constitutional challenges by saying that the laws and their application to specific cases are reasonable limitations to the constitutional rights." Well, Petcrus said that with the advent of this new legislation, Canada will likely emulate countries such as Great Britain in their crackdown on reported hate speech. So we've reported several times here on the podcast about how Great Britain is really cracking down on freedom of speech using the hate speech moniker, and it looks like Canada is following suit. Quote, "My overall take is that Canadian free speech law and culture is much less robust than the U.S., though more robust than Western Europe, but that this new law will reinforce our trend away from American-style speech culture towards the European version," is what he said. Now, the Senate sponsor of the bill, the Honorable Christopher Wells, described his experience working with the Jewish, Muslim, Asian, Black, Indigenous, and 2S LGBTQIA plus communities, stating that their universal plea to the government is that they do not feel safe, do not feel seen, and do not feel the law is there to help them at their time of greatest need. Again, all feelings, right? Can you tell me? I mean, my question here is, can you tell me where they aren't safe? I mean, where the law is against them, where it doesn't help them. I mean, it's just, they just don't feel that way. So we gotta do away with people's constitutional rights. Quote, "Bill C-9 is our answer to those responses," was what Wells stated. He said, "It is an opportunity for Parliament to say with unwavering moral clarity, right, and with the strength of criminal law, that our country sees you. Canada will stand with you, and hate will not be tolerated in this country." I love how they throw moral in there. Yeah, we're going to take away people's God-given rights, the right to religion, the right to free speech, those are God-given rights. But morally, we have to take those away, even though they're God-given. One section of the bill creates a separate hate crime offense for an offense motivated by hatred based on race, national and ethical origin, language, color, religion, sex, age, mental or physical disability, sexual orientation or gender identity or expression. Previously, the charge of hate crime could only be used to extend the sentence for a crime, but this bill creates it as a separate punishable offense. Wow. Wells argued that Canada needs to separate hate crime offense after claiming to witness a rise in so-called hate crimes against the LGBT community. I would love to see those statistics. Love it. They don't exist, but I'd love to see them. Quote, drag story times are protested, pride flags are burned or removed from municipalities and schools, and 25% of adolescents in Canada have experienced at least one form of cyberbullying, with trans and non-binary adolescents almost twice as likely to be targeted, is what Wells said. Well, Bill C-9 corrects this by creating a dedicated hate crime offense, ensuring that when someone willfully commits a criminal act motivated by hatred against an identifiable group, that motivation is recognized as the very essence of the wrongdoing, he added. Again, I would love to see how you get in the mind of somebody, how you understand their thoughts, how you recognize what they're thinking. Again, you can't do it, but I'd love to see it. The bill also prohibits the public display of a symbol that is principally used by or principally associated with a listed entity. This bans hosting the flags for designated terror organizations such as the Palestinian Liberation Front, the Taliban, and Al-Qaeda, and gangs such as La Mara Salvatrucha, I guess is how you pronounce that, along with far-right groups such as the Proud Boys. The bill seeks to prevent terrorist demonstrations like the pro-Hamas demonstrations in the U.S., where left-wing rioters shouted Al Akbar and burned the American flag in response to a speech by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. So, yeah, I mean, I love how, hey, we need to do this for these really, really great reasons. And really, they aren't great reasons. In fact, they're just the opposite. So anyway, something to keep track of. And we'll let you know if that actually does become law. Well, you may have seen there was quite a big uproar over this YouTuber, Jesse Ridgway, who goes by McLugger Nuggets. Yeah, I mean, I hadn't heard of him before this, but to his over 4 million subscribers, he's sparked heated debates over the last week after announcing that he and his wife had chosen to get an abortion. The couple recorded themselves explaining that decision after discovering the unborn child had a high likelihood of being born with Down syndrome. The pro-life crowd rightfully called out this evil for what it is, euthanasia. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It was killed because of what the parents thought it might be. Eugenics is not good. Eugenics is something that I mean, this is basically the definition of it. Even some leftists seem to grapple with the large ramifications, with several commentators expressing their cognitive dissonance with that abortion on demand for any reason is good, but also people with disabilities should be protected. Yeah, you can't have both ways, right? But they try. Ridgway said when he first found out the baby may have Down syndrome, he was optimistic, as he put it, and would try to make it work if the child was just a little slow intellectually. But he decided against it, saying, I just didn't fully understand that Down syndrome, what it entailed. He said, I didn't realize just how rough it is for the child, let alone the family. More often than not, they would be fully dependent on others for the rest of their life, unquote. So we're just going to kill it, I guess. Well, the one thing no one seemed to be talking about is how Ridgway opened up a conversation that should be seen as a gift to the pro-life argument, actually. And that is that he exposed the reality of why abortions are happening. And it's not the extreme situations that so often dominate headlines. Pro-abortion advocates would love for the general public to picture abortions happening only when the baby was going to die anyway, or when a woman was raped, or very, very early in pregnancy when the fetus was supposedly nothing more than a meaningless clump of cells. And for years, pro-lifers have pushed back on that narrative with facts and reasons. But it took a random YouTuber to show the reality of who is getting abortions and why. Per the National Library of Medicine, the most common reasons women seek abortions include financial reasons, 40%, timing, 36%, partner-related reasons, 31%, and the need to focus on other children, 29%. Most women reported multiple reasons for seeking an abortion, crossing over several themes. 64% of them did. Studies show that at least 67% of babies diagnosed with Down syndrome in the United States are aborted. In Iceland, there are almost no cases of Down syndrome. Why? Because those who have it are killed before they have a chance to be born. Between 350,000 and 400,000 Americans have Down syndrome, meaning they were born with an extra chromosome. When polled, these individuals consistently say they are satisfied with their life and were happy they were born. The Ridgways going viral with killing of their unborn child is prompted parents, siblings, and friends of people living with Down syndrome to post stories about why their lives are amazing. They speak of challenges, yes, but also of a surprising joy that can only come from accepting reality. People of faith would call this following God's plan, right? However, even non-religious people can understand that functionality in trying to control the world and the peace that comes from embracing life as it comes. It also points to a larger question. Who is qualified to determine what makes a life worth living? Stories such as the Ridgways are gleefully held up by the pro-abortion crowd as proof of why abortion should exist. But this viral Down syndrome story is a bridge too far for many people who recognize that trisomy 21 isn't life-limiting. That's the Down syndrome actual legal name or whatever. And it's not life-limiting enough to warrant a death sentence. They are pointing out how people with Down syndrome are often the happiest individuals they know. Why do they deserve to die for being differently abled, as progressives would like to say? I used to have a distant acquaintance, she says, who was a OBGYN who performed abortions. We would get into a surface level debate all the time about abortion. I will never forget the one time that she conceded to me one point: sex-selective abortions. She recalled a time her patients who only wanted 2 children came into her office to schedule a second-term abortion after finding out she was pregnant with a second girl. Quote, all I could think about was this woman's adorable toddler with blonde curls and big eyes and think she was making a huge mistake terminating a healthy pregnancy. Even someone participating in such an evil act had a moral standard. Most Americans who believe abortion should be legal also have lines they won't cross, which are commonly, determined by gestational age and things. But the thing about lines is that they are incredibly arbitrary. And if we tell mothers only to abort for life-limiting medical reasons, then who gets to decide what counts as life-limiting? Ridgway has made it clear that the real justifications people give for abortion, Down syndrome, my boyfriend broke up with me, I wanted a boy instead, I'm just really tired, are flimsy excuses when it comes down to it. Abortion is never the right choice. Now that the reasons it keeps happening are out in the open, we can start having honest conversations about it. Yeah, so, I mean, in the long run, maybe it's a good thing. We'll see. Well, I wanted to end today on a little story about Miss Rachel. Popular kids content creator Miss Rachel visited an anti-ICE protest this week. Yeah, where she sang a song with children about bringing down the walls everywhere until everyone's free outside a detention facility that holds illegal immigrants. Yeah, I'm going to spare you the song, okay? It's pretty bad. But anyway, in the video posted on social media, Miss Rachel was seen outside Delaney Hall in New Jersey, where she joined children in an apparent anti-ICE protest. And Miss Rachel's anti-ICE protest is one of the furthest steps that she's taken in expressing her political views as the character Miss Rachel. But it is not the first time she's been outspoken about her leftist views, and we've covered them here on the podcast. Miss Rachel also pushed LGBTQ talking points and even told trans-identifying man Dylan Mulvaney in 2023 that she would like him to be on our show, Songs for Littles. She has partnered with people like Jules Hoffman, an androgynous-looking character whose pronouns are they, them, theirs, on her Instagram profile. She's done Pride Month type of things. She's also repeatedly partnered with New York City Democrat Socialist Mayor Zola Mondami. I mean, she's out there. Okay, there's no doubt about what she's trying to promote, and she's trying to get across to your kids. So that's Miss Rachel. She showed you who she is. Would love to hear from you about the stories of the week, and of course you can always do that at uncommonsensepodcast.com. You can also go to our YouTube page, and thank you for listening. This podcast is a production of Morganite Communications.